It was the summer of 1987 when my cousins and I discovered the treehouse at the edge of the woods behind Grandpa's farm. Grandpa had always warned us to stay out of the forest. "It's old and wild," he'd say, his voice low and serious. "Things live in there that don't like to be disturbed." But we were kids, and forbidden things were always the most tempting. The treehouse wasn't ordinary. It was massive, built high up in the thick arms of an ancient oak tree. Its wood was gray and weathered, the kind of gray that looks like it's been pulled straight from an old black and white photograph. Strange carvings spiraled along the beams, symbols that none of us could decipher. But the treehouse called to us, a silent, persistent urge to climb up and explore. "Bet you're too scared to go up there," my cousin Jeremy teased, his freckled face split into a mischievous grin. "I'm not scared," I shot back, my pride stung. Before I knew it, we were racing up the rope ladder, the rough fibers biting into our hands. Inside, the air was stifling and carried an odd metallic tang. The floorboards creaked under our weight, and the walls were etched with more of those strange carvings. A makeshift table sat in the center, surrounded by crude wooden chairs. On the table lay a single object, a dusty, leather-bound book with no title. "Don't touch it," warned my older cousin Rachel, her voice trembling. She had always been the cautious one, but Jeremy, ever the troublemaker, ignored her. He flipped open the book, and the room seemed to exhale a long, low groan. The carvings on the walls seemed to shimmer and shift, like they were alive. "Look at this," Jeremy exclaimed, pointing to a page filled with jagged handwriting. It wasn't English or any language we recognized. The letters twisted and turned like they were writhing worms. At the bottom of the page was a crude drawing of a tree, the same tree we were in. "Let's go," Rachel said, her voice firm but shaky. "This place is wrong." But then we heard it, a whisper. It was faint at first, like the rustle of leaves, but it grew louder, more insistent. It didn't come from outside, though. It came from the treehouse itself. "Who's there?" Jeremy called out, his bravado faltering. The whispering stopped abruptly, replaced by a deep, resonating silence. Then the floor beneath us began to tremble. "Get out!" Rachel screamed, scrambling for the ladder. But as she reached it, the rope ladder snapped, falling to the ground below. We were trapped. The whispers returned, louder and more chaotic, overlapping voices that seemed to come from every direction. The walls of the treehouse began to close in, the carvings glowing with a sickly green light. The air grew colder, and an overwhelming sense of dread filled my chest. It felt like the tree itself was alive, and it didn't want us there. "The book!" Rachel shouted. "Close the book!" Jeremy slammed the book shut, but the whispers only grew louder. The table suddenly splintered, and the book burst into flames, its ashes swirling around us like a dark, angry cloud. A deep, guttural growl echoed through the treehouse, shaking the very foundation of the structure. The floorboards beneath Jeremy cracked open, and he screamed as a skeletal hand shot up, grabbing his ankle. Rachel and I lunged to pull him back, but the hand was impossibly strong. More hands emerged, clawing at him, their bony fingers wrapped in rotting flesh. The whispers had turned into screams. In a desperate act, Rachel grabbed a piece of broken wood and drove it into one of the hands. A horrible screech filled the air, and the hands recoiled, releasing Jeremy. We didn't wait to see what would happen next. The three of us scrambled to the window, climbing down the thick, gnarled branches of the tree. When we finally reached the ground, we ran as fast as we could, not stopping until we were back at Grandpa's farm. Out of breath and shaking, we tried to explain what had happened, but Grandpa's face turned pale. He nodded grimly and said, "I warned you. That treehouse isn't a place for the living." That night, we heard the whispers again, faint but unmistakable, carried on the wind. And when we looked out the window, we saw the treehouse glowing faintly in the darkness, its carvings alive with a pulsing green light. We never went back, and Grandpa had the woods fenced off the following week. To this day, I still dream about that treehouse. In my dreams, the whispers call my name, begging me to return. And sometimes I wake up with the faint scent of that metallic tang in the air.